What's going on, Florida State fans, Seminole Tribe? So, gotta do the tomahawk chop. Got my radio out here. My little small speaker is dead anyway, but I gotta charge it up. So anyway, I'm about to go do a workout this morning. But before I get into it, I want to make this video real quick because it's something I've been saying since 2004. I've been saying this, and I didn't have a YouTube channel at the time. So I'm gonna put this out there, and hopefully it's received with positivity. And if not, it's all good. I don't care. It was met with resistance when I said it in 04, and I'm gonna say it again. Back in 2004, when the ACC expanded to that school down south in Florida, and Virginia Tech and these other little schools, and everybody got excited. They was like, oh, us and that little school down south is in the same conference. And now, you know, people are disappointed because that school down south has not won an ACC championship since they joined in 2004. And I'm going to tell you why it was a bad move on Florida State and that school down south. I'm going to tell you why. Those two schools, all jokes aside, despite the rivalry we have with them, both of those schools are big enough and prestigious enough to have their own independent brand in football alone. They didn't need to join a conference for football. Now, if you want to go join a conference for all your other sports, I had no problem with that. But if you're going to join the ACC, which both of them eventually did, why the hell join a basketball-dominated conference? Why not join a conference that makes football the priority? Now, if the SEC is rumored that the SEC didn't want another Florida market school because they already had that little school in Gainesville, right? So with that being said, okay, fine. Then stay independent. You don't need to go to a conference. Your brand is bigger than everybody else, especially during the 80s and 90s. That school down south in the 80s, man, they was killing. I'm not gonna lie, they was rocking it. They was holding it down. I would say they dominated the 80s. And then this Florida State right here came in the 90s, and we had our run. You know, we can say we dominated the 90s. We have a claim to that. But the whole point I'm making is, everybody got excited, and I remember in 04 when I said that Florida State needs to look at getting out of the ACC and maybe joining the Big Ten at the time because they had more network revenue. It would have been a better business decision. Everybody on War Chant, not everybody, but a lot of people on these sites on like War Chant, I no longer mess with them, but when I was there, they went in. No, we shouldn't do that. You know, we the ACC, and they chant ACC like they love this conference. And I'm like, man, ACC ain't loving you. They're a basketball conference. They love North Carolina and Duke. That's their bread and butter. That's their priority. They don't give a damn about y'all. When Maryland left the ACC, that should have told y'all Florida State fans something. Because Maryland was in the ACC for a long, long time, and they brought plenty of prestige to the ACC in basketball, for sure. You know? So Maryland bolted in like 2013 because they knew what was coming. They saw what I've been said since 04. Maryland was smart. They got out of the ACC, went to the Big Ten. They got more revenue. Despite them not having as much success and winning a lot, they're in the conference now. They got more financial stability than they did in the ACC. It was a good business move for them. Florida State, with the brand that we have in football, we should have stayed independent. We could have held it down ourselves like Notre Dame is doing. Notre Dame joined the ACC in sports but stayed football independent. They got that contract. Florida State could have did the same exact thing if they were smart, but they didn't. They joined the ACC, and then they went in there. So now that you're in this mess, and then when Maryland left, we renewed the contract on top of that and stayed in the ACC until like 2030 or 2040, whenever it ends. So where do we go from here? Florida State football has went down as expected because you cannot have that type of stability in a basketball-dominated conference forever. It lasted longer than it should have, and that's just because these teams were so bad. But once the teams had a little decency, you knew that it was it. We basically went into a basketball conference as a football powerhouse. Doesn't make sense. And still to this day, I'm going to stand on what I say because the proof is in the pudding. What has the ACC done to benefit Florida State? Because Florida State has made the ACC benefit off of our football success. What has the ACC brought to us to make us great? I'm talking about in terms of sports. I'm not talking about academics and all the other stuff. I'm talking about strictly in sports. It ain't like we was dominating in basketball. It's not like we was dominating, you know, going in here and bringing championships to basketball. We haven't even won one in basketball since we've been in ACC. So I want to conclude real quick to say, listen, in my opinion, one of the biggest things that we can do is start looking out for ourselves and our best interests and our terms, you know, and we're in the ACC, we're married to them. It's kind of hard to get out of it now unless we get bought out by another conference. I know the Big Ten is probably going to be looking at Florida State because we'll be the only Florida market school they probably would consider, or maybe Miami. I don't know. Miami is a private school, so I don't know how that works. But because we are a public school and we have a reputation in football, they might consider us. And at this point, I don't know what that's going to do because they already brought in some California schools. It's becoming mega conferences. So we might just be another team in the pot now. But at this point, I will say this, Florida State, it don't matter what conference you're in at this point now. Back then it did. Now it doesn't matter whether you're in the ACC or you want to move to the Big Ten. Now it's just about having success. Your brand name speaks for itself. If you can just win and manage it, you'll be fine. But my whole point is, even when we did win in the 90s and everybody was happy, financially we didn't pocket as much as we could have had we stayed independent. I believe if we had our own brand, look at Notre Dame. I say it all the time. Notre Dame is pocketing their own money, more money. Why do you think they ain't joining no conference in football? They don't need to. Don't make business sense. They could have losing seasons and still get exposure on TV and still have a large fan base and have a major network behind them. Florida State had the brand to do the same damn thing. Even the other school down south in Florida had the brand to do the same damn thing, but both schools joined this pathetic basketball-loving conference. And now it's starting to fall apart, especially when you're not having success. So I just want to come on here and make this video because, man, it's like when you see it coming and you know it's going to happen and everybody else is telling you, no, you're crazy. And now these same fans that bashed me in 2004 or spoke against my opinion are now saying the same thing I'm saying today. It took them decades to figure it out. I saw it. I mean, you know what I mean? It wasn't rocket science. When they started expanding and you saw these teams come over, I'm like, man, this going to be a disaster. You know, Miami, perfect example. All this winning tradition they brought in, but since they joined ACC, they haven't done nothing. They had some off-field issues as well that limited their program from recruiting. So when you know they have these problems prior to joining ACC, you can't expect stability. It's going to last for so long. They had gaps from the 90s, from their last championship in the 90s to the early 2000s. They had like a decade where they were on probation and they had these issues. You saw that coming, and you knew that was going to affect their recruiting. And then once your recruiting is affected, it's hard to get that back, especially when other schools got more money, bigger conference, and they have the facilities that you don't. It's so much stuff going on. All people looked at was name brand and didn't pay attention to the business aspect. And they didn't see how SEC schools are getting more upgraded facilities. Freaking Ole Miss and Mississippi State can get recruits to come there now, or top-tier coaches to get hired there now than Florida State, Miami. That makes no sense. Back in the days, nobody would have thought about going to no Ole Miss over Florida State or Miami. Now they got this money and this NIL now and all this other stuff. Man, it's open game. So Florida State brand was bigger than ACC is basically what I'm saying. I guess I could have said that in 30 seconds. But I want to give an in-depth background and a passionate video about it, because when you've been saying something for like damn near 20 years and now everybody's kind of coming on to reality of what I'm saying, it's like, man, what the heck? But, hey, to each his own. People see things differently. So I'm not on here to say I told you so. I'm just on here to remind the people that know me personally, that said what they said to me back then, and I've been telling them for decades, man, we've been needed to get out. And when Maryland bolted, we still stayed. I was like, man, this is it. We're going to suck. So we won a championship, you know, with Winston. I get it, but that's one. You know, we weren't competing on a regular for championships in the Jimbo era. We had one run. That was it. When Biden was there, we had many runs. And we only came up with 3, but we had many opportunities. And the business side caught up with us. We got too comfortable with being successful. We never prioritized updating facilities, upgrading things, getting, you know, what needs to be done for the better interest of Florida State. We just rode on our success and name brand, and it caught up with us. And same thing with Miami. That's what's happening to them. So FSU and Miami, you should have stayed independent, but now that you didn't, and you don't want to market and be your own brand, now you got to make it work. Now you just got to win. That's the only way to get it back. You got to win in this game to get back. And good luck with that, with all these other schools making all this money now. We really can't compete with it. It's harder. So anyway, hope the Noles do their thing. We'll see what we do. All right? Go Noles.